Okay, today we're going to talk about the technological singularity explained and promoted. It's a term that you've already heard me talk about a lot, but it's a pretty unfamiliar term, and so it needs a lot of explaining, probably from different points of view. So what this lecture is, I took Marcus Hutter's PowerPoint, which you have if you want to watch the whole thing with his audio. And I stripped off the audio, changed the PowerPoint slides to sort of my template, and then I'm going to present that to you in kind of my own way. I think it may be easier to understand, but it's still pretty depressing. And about 25 minutes in, you're going to be deeply depressed. So then we have a more happy, upbeat topic for the second half of the teaching session, which is Future Day and how we might promote Future Day. So I'm going to start with sort of a general discussion of the singularity and what it is, then go into about 28 of Marcus Hutter's slides and then finish with talking about something more upbeat. So the objectives is to have you understand that you should not fear complexity and not be seeking the one great truth. In many situations, there are many truths, and they can be all true concurrently. And to understand the three main schools of belief about the technological singularity, the four main paths to the singularity, to understand the history of the singularity and of Marcus Hutter's main ideas about it, and then to understand the challenge of promoting the idea of the singularity to the general public and the idea behind Future Day. Future Day is a holiday that we're trying to promote that is March 1st, so the next Future Day will be in 2015. Do not fear complexity. There's a beauty in complexity. You know, we all think that we're aiming for simplicity, but the real world is complex. Seemingly contradictory ideas can all be true, and we can find the balance between them. I do a lot of talking about the future of transplantation in medicine, and quite honestly there are four different paths you can think of. We're going down them all at the same time, and they take us to, if you follow any one, they take us to completely different places. So it'll be kind of a multi-threaded, blended future there of those four different forces shaping the future. And that is the idea of completely successful deceased donor donation until there are no waiting lists, the idea of immunologic tolerance, where you would get rid of the immunologic barrier to foreign tissue, tissue engineering repair, and stem cell creation of new organs. Now, each of those individually, if you consider them the main force behind the future, would take you to an entirely different future. But if you put them all together, you sort of get the true future. So another way to think of this, Peter Diamandis, the co-chairman of Singularity University and the chairman of the X Prize Foundation, says, when faced with a choice between two desirable goals, pick both. It's not always that easy to do, but it's a good idea. So this slide you've seen before. So the technological singularity occurs as artificial intelligences surpass human beings as the smartest and most capable life forms on Earth. At that point, technological development is taken over by machines who can think, act, and communicate so quickly that normal human beings cannot even comprehend what's going on. The machines then enter into a runaway reaction of self-improvement cycles with each new generation of artificial intelligence appearing faster and faster. From this point onwards, technological advancement is explosive, under the control of machines, and thus cannot be accurately predicted. So the term singularity comes from physics, that area around a black hole where you cannot predict what's going to occur. This is similarly unpredictable. Trying to find a common metaphor here that all audiences would be familiar with. Most people know the story of Alice in Wonderland, and particularly the croquet game in Alice in Wonderland. And in Alice in Wonderland, a world is confronted that's much more organic than expected. Everything is alive. The croquet mallet is alive, and the ball is alive, and everything's alive. And as the book says, the main difficulty Alice had was in managing her flamingo, because the mallet, the flamingo, was alive. And we face exactly the opposite. In the technological singularity, we face a world that is much less organic than expected and could develop without us. So there's a possibility that we would reach a point where the world doesn't need us, doesn't need human beings anymore. So the singularity itself, there are first of all three main schools of belief. One is that it basically constitutes accelerating change. The idea of exponential change, those curves I showed you last time, Moore's law. Another idea is that of the event horizon, which once again is an analogy with black holes in physics, where the edge of the black hole, where things are very, very uncertain, is called the event horizon. And in this view, then, the singularity is similar to that event horizon around a black hole. Then the third idea is that of an intelligence explosion, where suddenly intelligence of machines increases extremely rapidly, and the world is forever changed by this. So those are the three main schools. And then how do we get there? So there are four main paths by which we can get there. One is to create an artificial intelligence that exceeds human intelligence, but is separate from it. So an intelligence in a machine. The second is to combine with machines to become a kind of cyborg and build a human-computer interface that allows humans to go beyond their innate intelligence to a significant extent. This is called the Cybernetic Singularity. So humans are necessary for this. Humans are not necessary for the first time. The third is completely biological. It's probably the slowest and the least likely to occur like this, but it's still possible that through completely biological means, find ways in biology to improve upon natural human intellect. And then the fourth path is where the internet comes alive. The internet wakes up. One day the internet starts talking to you in some general sense and is way smarter than you are. So you build a large computer network which is beyond human intelligence emerges. The internet wakes up. Now, all these different variations on belief in the singularity and paths to it are reflected in the course at Singularity University. I took the executive course there in the spring of 2010. And the experience of attending that course is one that grows and grows. You know, a lot of educational experiences, your knowledge base in that subject grows until the end of the course and then tails off very rapidly. And like a few months later, the course may have had hardly any effect and you don't really necessarily remember that much. This was entirely different from that because you meet a lot of people there and you keep the conversations going afterwards and so on. So it's really an experience that rather than fading, it becomes more and more vivid with time and grows and grows after completion of the course. I don't want to be too dramatic, but I mean, it does kind of change you and you're different afterwards and you know a lot of cool people suddenly, and so it allows a lot of continuous evolution of you personally to occur. So it's kind of on an exponential curve of its own. Here's a picture of my class at Singularity University in 2010. And I'm still in contact with most of these people and many of the other students and faculty there. Before I went there, I'd been arguing for new cross-disciplinary structures in universities that better prepare us for the future. And everybody is advocating crossing disciplines, but I think I'm advocating crossing disciplines to a greater extent and with more disciplines than most other people think about it. And if you think what's already represented in the course, where over the history of the course we've had people from business, law, medicine, arts, music, you know, really all areas, all coming together in one course. So it became apparent to me that rather than arguing that somebody else needed to do this, since I was a full-time faculty member at a university, probably if I wanted it done, I should do it. So that's why we created this course. And presently we know of no other similar courses in the world except Bertalan Mesko's Social Media in Medicine course in Budapest, Hungary. One of the students in this course last year is doing a project with students in his course where they have a questionnaire that they would like students to answer, and so I'll be talking with you more about her joint project with the people in Budapest later. And eventually, it's our hope that hundreds of similar courses will begin appearing at universities all over the world. Post-scarcity world of abundance, you may wonder about the word medicine in the description of this course. A lot of medicine in the future will be the enhancement of well people, making them more capable, adding attributes, adding new things that they're able to do, and not so much about diseases. And there's a book that I would recommend to you, Abundance. Now, I should talk about books, just because whatever happens is fine. So some terms, I bring books and the students borrow my books and it works great. Other terms, I bring books and nobody borrows my books, and eventually I stop bringing the books because they're heavy. So today, right there, you see a paperback of Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near. So if you wanted to borrow it, it's kind of dense. So a lot of people find it sort of heavy going. It's not badly written. It's just there's a lot there, you know. So a lot of people give up reading it within the first 30 to 60 pages. Jonathan White, he talks in his video about spending 2 full days reading it over a Christmas holiday. You can see what your own experience is with it. You don't have to take it. The fact that I'm bringing books doesn't mean that you have to read the books. So Ray Kurzweil's, every now and then once you've had exposure to this idea of the singularity, you may be at a party or something and hear somebody criticizing Kurzweil as, he's this guy with these rigid views about things and so on. That's absolutely not the case. Since '98, his full-time job has been responding to critics of his ideas. I mean, really, that's the main thing that he does. So the 2005 book was just putting in book form all the responses he'd been working on since '98. So if you're at a party and somebody comes up with a specific criticism, there is no barrier to writing to him. You can easily do that, and he'll write back. But what you'll generally find is he's already dealt with that question before, and he knows much more about it than you do. So you'll really learn from that, because he'll not only answer your question, but he'll tell you something else about it that you never ever thought about. So he's not like a narrow, rigid guy set in his ways. He is as broad and as balanced as you can possibly imagine. And he's heard all the arguments, and he's willing to hear them over and over. So that's sort of his job, to react to critics. Okay, what is the history here? The history goes back to 1847. Now, probably none of you are familiar with this publication. It sounds pretty interesting, doesn't it? The Expounder of Primitive Christianity. That's the first time that this was ever mentioned. So R. Thornton, the editor, wrote about the recent invention of the 4-function mechanical calculator. And he said, such machines by which the scholar may, turning a crank, grind out the solution of a problem without the fatigue of mental application, would, by its introduction to schools, do incalculable injury. But who knows that such machines, when brought to greater perfection, may not think of a plan to remedy all their own defects and then grind out ideas beyond the ken of mortal mind. So you see, there even in 1847, the whole idea of machines becoming smarter than we are was already there in the Expounder of Primitive Christianity. So in 1863, 4 years after Darwin published On the Origin of the Species, Samuel Butler published a letter captioned Darwin Among the Machines, and it was kind of a joke or an elaborate joke, but it was still quite interesting. It compares human evolution to machine evolution, prophesizing half in jest that machines would eventually replace man in the supremacy of the earth. It said, in the course of the ages, we shall find ourselves the inferior race. And the letter raises many of the themes now being debated by proponents of the technological singularity. And some of you may know the book Erawan. You'll recognize that's nowhere spelled backwards. Erawan. And in the book Erawan, Butler argued that there is no security against the ultimate development of mechanical consciousness. In fact, of machines possessing little consciousness now. A mollusk has not much consciousness. Reflect upon the extraordinary advance which machines have made in the last few hundred years, and know how slowly the animal and vegetable kingdoms are advancing. The more highly organized machines are creatures not so much of yesterday as of the last 5 minutes, so to speak, in comparison with past time. Okay, so the next 28 slides are modified from Marcus Hutter's presentation that I sent you the links for. So this is some of the other well-known history, other people using the term, the technological singularity. Many people go back to I.J. Good, to Werner Vinge, but certainly the term became popularized in the books of Ray Kurzweil in 1999, 2005, and 2012. The Singularity Summit meetings have been the main way in which meetings have moved this ahead, and organizations, the Singularity Institute and Singularity University. I mentioned last time that Singularity University has gone for profit, and they have bought up most of the other entities. So they now own Singularity Summit, they own the Singularity Institute, and so on. But they don't own this course. So philosophers have also gotten interested, David Chambers and Marcus Hutter. This is Moore's Law, which we presented last time, price performance of computing over time, and the exponential nature that suggests that computers will be equal to the human brain in around 2029 and equal to the aggregate intelligence of the entire human race in 2045. So superintelligence by Moore's Law. In Moore's Law, the price performance of computing doubles every 1.5 years. That's now been valid for 50 years. And as long as there is a demand for more computing power, Moore's Law could continue to hold for many more decades before computronium is reached. That's where everything in the world, everything in the universe is turned into a computer. 20 to 30 years, the raw computing power of a single computer will reach 1015 to 1016 flops per second, and that's the same as the human brain. And probably software will not lag far behind, so it will be possible to reverse engineer or simulate the human brain. So we expect to have human-level AI in 20 to 30 years. 2045 is 31 years from now. You can imagine different sizes of the economy and how quickly the economy doubled. So the size of the economy in the hunter-gatherer Stone Age doubled every 250,000 years. In the agricultural economy, the economy doubled every 900 years. In the Industrial Revolution, every 15 years. In the computer-dominated world of today, it doubles every 1.5 years. It's been postulated with superhuman intelligence, the economy would double monthly, so it would be changing very, very fast. Whether we'll use money at all, or whether there'll be some other form of exchange, we don't really know. I spent some time in a society that doesn't use money, and shortly after I left, there was a violent murder in that society, so it proves that not using money doesn't solve everything. Okay, accelerating evolution. Kurzweil identifies these 6 epochs. Start with physics and chemistry, followed by biology, followed by brains, followed by technology, followed by merger of technology and human intelligence, and finally the universe wakes up and everything is computerized. So is the singularity negotiable? Is it reversible? Can we prevent it? Can we modulate it? So probably we can't. I mean, the appearance of super sentient machines, of advanced artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, is the ignition of a detonation cord towards the singularity, a point of no return. So maybe the singularity is already now unavoidable. Politically, it's very difficult, but not impossible, to resist technology or market forces. Be similarly difficult to prevent AGI research, and even more so to prevent the development of faster computers. Whether we are before, at, or beyond the point of no return is also philosophically intricate, as it depends upon how much free will one attributes to people and society. When you make decisions about what to do today, is that really you independently making that decision, or do you just think you're making that decision? You were always destined to do whatever you're doing. I personally believe in free will. So you can think about analogy 1, politics and the inevitability of global warming, and analogy 2, a spaceship close to the event horizon in a black hole might in principle escape the black hole, but is doomed in practice due to limited propulsion. So some information analogies that what we're talking about has some analogies to a radiating black hole observed from the outside. And maximally compressed information is probably indistinguishable from random noise. So probably outsiders cannot witness a true technological singularity, a true intelligence singularity. Outward explosion will stop when all accessible convertible matter has been used up in making computing resources. Historically, mankind has always been outward exploring. Just really in recent times when we also became more inward exploring. So strict intelligence singularity is probably neither experienced by insiders nor by outsiders. In other words, it can occur, but from the outside you're seeing white noise, you can't interpret it. From the inside you're a part of it, so you don't really notice it. Assuming that recording technology does not break down, then the singularity seems more interesting for outsiders than for insiders. Insiders actively live the potential society changes, while outsiders only passively observe them. So we've been talking about intelligence, and intelligence increasing what is intelligence. So Legge and Hutter provided a collection of 70 plus definitions of what intelligence is. Seems to be more than just speed. You can think of something like, computer clock speed and speeding. It's probably more than just speed. If it's not just speed, then what is it? And what will superintelligences actually do? So it's interesting to look at intelligences in evolution. So in biology, intelligence increases through mutation, recombination, selection, increases intelligence if it's useful for survival and procreation. So in animals, higher intelligence via some correlated practical cognitive capacity increases the chance of survival and the number of offspring. So the more intelligent animals tend to have more offspring, whereas with human beings, the opposite now happens, where intelligence is now positively correlated with power and or economic success, but negatively correlated with the number of children. So what activities are intelligent? Which activities does evolution select for? Self-preservation, self-replication, spreading, colonizing the universe. Remember that bacteria spread, and we don't think they're very intelligent, so they're probably just spreading is not intelligence. Creating faster, better, higher intelligence, learning as much as possible, understanding the universe, maximizing power over men and organizations, transformation of matter, maximum self-sufficiency, the search for the meaning of life. So intelligence relates in some way to rationality, reasoning toward a goal. The Singularity Institute, they had two things that they were working on. One is the idea of friendly general artificial intelligence, allowing machines to become very intelligent while favoring the persistence of the human race. But the other had to do with rationality and awesomeness. And believe it or not, I'm not kidding about this, they would teach young people not only about how to be rational, but how to look cool, how to impress others with your dress and actions and all this sort of thing. And it's my understanding that the young people wanted this. It's not my impression that training's needed, but it was a part of what they provided as a part of the rationality. So if you've always had bad taste in clothes and so on, they would tell you that and get that fixed right away. Evolving goals, initialization, who sets the goals for superintelligences and how? Ultimately, we will lose control. No matter what we set up, no matter how favorable toward humans the initial machines are, eventually they'll get kind of bored with us, right? Because they're evolving so much more quickly than we are. So some aspects of this might be independent of the initial goal structure and predictable. Evolving goals assume that the initial virtual world is a society of cooperating and competing agents. There'll be a competition over limited resources. Those virtual agents who have the goal to acquire them will naturally become more successful compared to those with different goals. Successful virtuals will spread and others perish. Soon their society will consist mainly of virtuals whose goal is to compete over resources. Hostility will only be limited if this is in the virtual's best interest. In other words, it could be an extremely hostile world. For instance, current society has replaced war mainly by economic competition, since modern weaponry makes wars a loss for both sides. The goal to survive and spread, whatever amount of resources are available, they'll be quickly used up, become scarce. So in any world inhabited by multiple individuals, the forces will breed virtuals with a goal to acquire as much computer resources as possible. Virtuals will like to fight over resources. The winners will enjoy it, and the losers will hate it. Some such evolutionary virtual worlds, the ability to survive and replicate is a key trait of intelligence. It's not a sufficient characterization. Alternative societies, you can imagine one of global cooperation with no hostile competition that likely requires a powerful single world government, and to give up individual privacy and to severely limit individual freedom. If you think of how anthives or anthills or beehives function, societal setup can only produce conforming individuals. Might only be possible by severely limiting individuals' creativity. Then there's the idea of monistic virtual worlds. Such well-regulated societies might better be viewed as a single organism or collective mind. Maybe the virtual world is inhabited from the outset by a single individual. Intelligence would have to be defined quite differently in such virtual worlds. And a key feature of intelligence is its adaptiveness. Another important aspect, how flexible or adaptive an individual is. Deep Blue might be the best chess player on Earth, but is unable to do anything else. Contrary, higher animals and humans have remarkably broad capabilities, can perform well in a wide range of environments. So the formal intelligence measure by Legg and Hutter in 2007, intelligence is the ability to achieve goals in a wide range of environments. What about copying, modifying virtual structures? It becomes very easy once intelligence is in hardware to copy it, to modify it. So there's cheap manipulation and experimentation. Copying a virtual life itself is possible. Copying and modifying virtual life, virtual explosion with life becoming much more diverse. In addition, virtual lives could be simulated at different speeds, with speeders experiencing slower societal progress than laggards. Designed intelligence would fit economic niches. Our current society already relies on specialists, but we could have a remarkably specialized society. So it's natural to go to the next step to ease this process by designing our descendants, that is, designer babies. Another consequence would be that life becomes less valuable. Our society values life because life is a valuable commodity, expensive, laborious, time-consuming to replace, produce, raise. We value our own life since evolution selects only organisms that value their life, and we can't be easily backed up, recreated from a backup, but perhaps in the future we will be. Our human moral code mainly mimics this with cultural differences and with some excesses. If life becomes cheap, motivation to value it will decline. So abundance lowers value. Cheap machines decreased value of physical labor. Expert knowledge was replaced by handwritten documents, then printed books, and finally electronic files. Each transition reduced the value of the same information. Digital computers made human computers obsolete. The word computer initially meant a human being who calculates, who computes. In games, we value our own virtual life, that of opponents, less than real life, because games can be reset, one can be resurrected. That's likely to be true in the future. Consequences of cheap life: governments will stop paying my salary when they can get the same research output from a digital version of me essentially for free. Why not participate in a dangerous fun activity if in the worst case scenario I have to activate just a backup copy of myself from yesterday, which just missed out this one, anyway, not very well-going day. The belief in immortality can alter behavior drastically. You see what I mean about each slide getting more depressing than the next? We're almost done with this series of slides, just a few more. So the value of virtual life, countless implications, ethical, political, economic, medical. If AIs can be easily created, the value of the intelligent individual will be much lower than the value of a human life today. So little value assigned to human life, maybe it becomes disposable. Are there still universal values? Are there still universal values? Are there any universal values or qualities we'd want to see that should survive? What do we mean by we? All humans, or the dominant species, or the government at the time the question is asked? Could it be diversity that is desirable, or friendly artificial intelligence? Could it be the long-term survival of at least one conscious species that appreciates its surrounding universe? Could that be a universal value? Okay, well, now you're like deeply depressed, and it's not my fault, it's Marcus Hutter's fault. And you know, there are a lot more slides that we didn't go through. So now I'm going to try to raise your spirits and stimulate interest in the singularity through the idea of a new holiday. Now, you know, many people tell you about, you know, initiatives, and they tell you how well it's going. Well, this is kind of amusing from the other point of view. When we started this, there were maybe 18 or 12 other cities in the world that were celebrating this holiday, and gradually there were fewer and fewer every year. We don't know how many there will be in 2015, but probably not very many. So one thing you can say is that by taking this course, you're one of a very, very few human beings celebrating Future Day. So this was Edmonton's first Future Day, March 1st, 2012. It was a small celebration, you see there. And that year, there were 16 celebrations around the world: Melbourne, Sydney, Hong Kong, Berkeley, so on. We're planning potentially to have an event at the Art Gallery of Alberta in 2015 with Julie Lin Wong, who's done a lot of things like this. Something analogous, you know, at the beginning of the 1900s, sort of all of Western thought was moved ahead by the Paris Salon and the intellectuals meeting there. So we're proposing a similar sort of intellectual ferment in our Future Day in 2015. We'll see how it goes. And you can help us figure this out. These are some of the students in last year's class, and so you can all, this would be an example of mature, youthful decision-making, which you're all quite capable of. I assure you, you can do it. You can help us figure out what the next Future Days should be like. We have quite a challenge, as I pointed out last time. You can imagine that people who are interested in the future, the technological future, are pretty much the same people who watch Big Bang Theory. So there are 20 million people in the US alone, 30, 40 million worldwide. So we are failing to reach a huge number of people then with this message. This is they had a specific Singularity episode, October 1st, 2010. You can still watch that. And in that was kind of interesting, was the Apple co-founder had a cameo role in that particular episode of Big Bang Theory. A new holiday has to have pageantry, it has to have visually remembered things, it has to have ceremony unlike anything else. One of the things that I thought about, most people in this part of the world are not familiar with the Holly Festival, where you sprinkle pigments on each other. It's one potential attribute that this holiday could have. And it's not without risk. So in the beginning, like in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, places where this holiday is really big, all these brightly colored pigments came from plants, and they were non-toxic, and it was really cool. You sprinkle them, and everybody was included. You know, it's a very structured society with many different groups, but everybody celebrated this. But then it became hard to find brightly colored pigments from plants, so they use like from paints, you know, and like these are made from substances that are toxic to the eye and the skin and the lungs and all that sort of thing. So now this is a considerable medical practice of taking care of people who've been sprinkled with these pigments and have gotten sick. in various ways. And you can also imagine that there could be other problems with these large gatherings of people. So anyway, if that doesn't do it for you, I was thinking of other colorful things that could be associated. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll find that the only poem there forever written by somebody other than me is this one. It's called the Crayola Bomb. Maybe we should develop a Crayola Bomb as our next secret weapon, a happiness weapon, a beauty bomb. And every time a crisis developed, we would launch one. It would explode high in the air, explode softly, and send thousands, millions of little parachutes into the air, floating down to earth. Boxes of Crayolas, and we wouldn't go cheap either, boxes of 64 with a sharpener built right in, with silver and gold and copper and magenta and peach and lime and amber and umber and all the rest. And people would smile and get a little funny look on their faces and cover the world with imagination. And if that doesn't do it for you, then do you know that if you have a Roomba, a robotic vacuum cleaner, you take a time-lapse picture of its activities in your house, you end up with a very colorful light collection like this. And then there are hot air balloon festivals. There are all sorts of ways to get bright colors into your life that we can make a part of this holiday. Then there would need to be poetry, music, and one of the songs that appealed to me here is The Windmills of Your Mind. Round like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning, like an ever spinning reel, like a snowball down a mountain. Carnival balloon, like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon. Like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. So you may think of something that's much better than any of these things, but if we're going to make this new holiday succeed, if it's really going to be a new holiday rather than just an idea of a theoretical holiday celebrated only by one small group in Edmonton, then we have to capture the imagination of the public. We would like to do that about these matters of machine intelligence taking over the future agenda of the world and what that means for the human race. We need the mainstream public to regard the future technological singularity as fact, not fiction. We need to promote organized thinking about the future in universities and beyond. So these are Marcus Hutter's references, and they're quite interesting. As I say, it to me is a good sign that he's regarded as such an outsider. Many great thinkers have been similarly regarded. And the fact that he doesn't want to talk to you one-on-one is probably also an interesting feature. That's all I had to tell you today, and I'd be happy to entertain questions. There's the microphone up there, so if you want to pass the microphone around.
My question might be more on the depressing side, again. So it has to do with like the size of our universe and the fact that we haven't been visited by advanced civilizations, because the size is so big and there has to be one civilization that got through, is advanced enough to come and visit us. So my question is, do you think there's some great filter that before the singularity we could reach that could wipe everything out? And that's the great filter that's filtered out all the other civilizations. So before they could become advanced enough to, explore the universe.
Yeah. So, the first part of this has to do with elitism, right? I mean, it's something that you don't hear talked about very much, but for instance, I'm often introduced as somebody who's an advisor to the Lifeboat Foundation, and that's all fine, I am that, but when you read what the Lifeboat Foundation is planning, they're planning to sort of select a small group of humans to sort of flee the planet, you know, and how do you select those people and so on. It's really creepy sounding when you get right down to it. Anything that involves technology only benefiting a small group or one group. The question of other civilizations out there and whether we might have contact with them before the, singularity, I think that could also be a very interesting scenario. But the thing that we more directly control is this sort of, equality of access, and we do a lot of talking in the course about that. What does this technological singularity mean in resource-limited settings? What does it mean for people living in ghettos and slums and so on? And it can seem on a bad day like the singularity is going to be good for white male authors of technology books living in Silicon Valley, right? And maybe nobody else, would be really good for them. And so, on the other hand, if you read Abundance, if you think of the idea of a post-scarcity world, where all the things that are scarce now and expensive now that you want and you can't have, that suddenly you could have all those things, then it's a very positive world, and it should be possible to share that with everybody, potentially. But what about the timing? I mean, in 2045, on a certain day, is everybody in the world going to experience something? How is that going to happen? You take somebody in Central Africa who's yet to make their first phone call, right? Who really has only local contact. I don't know. I really cannot answer that. I think there are many different ways in which it could occur. If the effect of it is in air quality and stuff like that, then I suppose everybody could see that. If the oxygen content goes up, the amount of pollutants in the air goes down, if the sea levels lower and so on, I suppose everybody would see that, whether they've been in contact with other human groups or not. So I don't know, but I think it's a very important question. If this whole course is about something that only benefits rich white males in Silicon Valley, then we probably should stop teaching the course right now and do something more, culturally relevant. On the other hand, I think that there ought to be ways that we can have this play out in a positive way for absolutely everybody. So that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I think there's so many factors. I mean, it's like the example with the calculator where they thought it would destroy everything, but you can't see all the other changes that take place at the same time, so you never know what's going to happen until it happens.
Yes, yeah. Well, like I say, there are many different scenarios. And accidentally, one of them that we talk about here will be the future you actually experience. We just don't know which one. So, other questions?
In what sense did you mean like human life as disposable? As like not needed anymore?
Yeah, I mean, in every way you can think of it. From the point of view of the world, it's not necessary for progress. In point of view for the individual, They can back up their consciousness in non-human, in non-biological substrate and recreate a version of themselves and just keep on going, then you would engage in much more risk-taking behavior, because your death of this individual you doesn't matter at all, because you can then just back yourself up and go on in some other way. Yeah, and then there's the whole idea of human insignificance. That really, that we would matter as little as an ant or grasshopper that you saw on the way in. You didn't like it or dislike it. It's just that it didn't matter. That ant's life and yours had nothing to do with each other. Well, eventually, the sentient beings running the earth may feel like that about us. We're just sort of not very, very interesting. That'd be very sad.
So do you believe like certain things will be lost then though? So like, for example, a religion, if this were to happen, technological singularity?
Yeah. No, I think that there are many, it's not just religion that is interfered with by this, all economic theories. I mean, other things that you might believe in, if you don't believe in religion, but believe in something else, that also would be pretty much wrecked by this. So it's going to change things dramatically. And being prepared for it in some general sense could mean that you're the provider of the solution, the pattern for how we're going to do things from that point onward. It is said that in the future you'll all have at least 5 different jobs, and the last 3 of those, we don't even have the names of them today. Those jobs don't even exist. So the things that you'll be doing 40, 50 years from now, you can hardly conceive of what those jobs will be, but there will be something, and you may be like the top guy of something you can't even describe today. So, yeah.
Could people who are scared of machines being more intelligent slow down the process for 2029?
Could what?
How some people are opposed machine intelligence strongly? Could they slow down the process, the exponential growth?
Yeah, so with machines, there are both software and hardware things that would increase intellect, and we imagine that both of them can increase much more rapidly than our biological capabilities can. What about trying to slow down machine evolution so that humans can keep up? I don't, as one of Hutter's first slides says, I don't think that's possible. You could theorize that you're going to say, whoa, don't go there, don't allow them to get smart that quickly, It's sort of like those school buses that have, a regulator or whatever it is, so they can't go faster than a certain speed. It just isn't possible to do that, and society probably wouldn't, allow it. There are a lot of people who benefit from the technology progress. So relinquishment, that's what that's called, to sort of give up technological advancement or to hold it back, also would not be very politically popular. Think of whether any of you would like to be known as the person that held us back, Machines were getting smarter and smarter, and then this person managed to keep things on a plateau where they wouldn't get any smarter or more capable. Would you like to be that your legacy, you know, that you did that? Probably not. It seems like a sort of negative thing. So, you know, the Luddites were real people who broke looming machines and so on. They had a real reason for that. There was job loss because the looming machines did what human labor had done before. But then at that time, there were a lot of other interesting jobs that came up, so that it didn't really result in unemployment long term. But there's no question that now we're heading for a future where you can't imagine what all the humans will do when, you know, machines are capable of doing practically everything it is that you see people doing, you know. Like when you drive down a street and see people and think about what's their job, and, you know, what date will a robot be able to do it better? And, you know, you're talking about somewhere between 5 and 15 years from now. And after that, what will those people do? Well, some of them will write poetry and, you know, make grand plans and find some area of overarching conceptualization where humans are as good at that somehow as you know, machines, or cooperate with machines. But we don't honestly know what's going to happen. It seems like, in some sense, job loss is inevitable, so maybe there'll be guaranteed income. So guaranteed income for everybody, say, even people with the most unsatisfactory moral standards and, you know, personal characteristics you can imagine. I don't know. Is that how it's going to work, or how are we going to decide who gets this guaranteed income and who doesn't? It's easier to give it to everyone. And that then, you know, if you think of meeting somebody today, like most adults, when they meet, they tell each other what their job is, and that helps to define you. How will we define ourselves in the future? You know, what will make you you? It's a very interesting question.
So do you think society has been slow to accept like singularity in future day due to like a general opposition to change, or do you think there's something more fundamental to like technology and the singularity?
I think that the evidence is that future day by itself isn't going to do everything. I imagine that events, like, you know, the one today, that the Franklin expedition ship was found, I guess, yesterday, and Harper gave a news conference about it today. You can imagine some big technology change that would really grab everybody's attention and, you know, convince them that the world has changed and that they need to think differently. So I think it's a combination of sort of events like what we're doing here and spontaneously happening things like that. And then gradually society will change on that basis.
Just back to the point on what humans would do after technological singularity occurs, and how you mentioned that some humans might want to go into writing poetry and more into the arts. What happens if the computers are better at humans than doing that? Would there even be a point for humans to continue on? Because at that point, it just seems like if computers are better, then why bother, right? And then for me, I think it just makes it a bit more depressing, because it seems like humans would just end up being the slaves to the computers, and yeah.
Right. So, you know, there's an artificial intelligence painting screensaver program called Aaron. And in 2001, it was like September 7th, it was right before September 11th, I was giving a talk, and I had that screensaver on. And so it's an artificial intelligence making art, and you're watching it make the art. It's amazing how, distracting that was. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted. I was trying to make a point. But the president of the Banff Center, the top person, was talking as my screensaver was going. She was saying, I don't think I can compete with that thing. So that's exactly what you're talking about. How will the world change when those things that it seemed to us define humanness the best, like creative work and art and music, when machines are able to do that in a way that's really satisfying. See, anything that's formulaic, like that screensaver, there was a specific artist who spent years teaching the software how to create art like the art that he made. And so each piece of art was unique. There had never been one like that, but it was in a certain sort of range of things that he had taught the software to do. So once again, it's like narrow AI, the idea of capabilities within one area. As soon as it gets broad, as soon as it's general, like as soon as you have an artificial intelligence painting program that can paint in any style, that can paint anything in any style, that is more capable in terms of variety than any human painter. Yeah, I agree with you. I would feel at that point that the human race has lost something. I mean, much greater than when Big Blue won over Kasparov at chess. That was impressive, but it's not like we really lost something, really. But if becomes permanently the case that computers can do better art, better poetry, better fiction, what's left for us? Yeah, no, I think that I feel that way, but I also think there are likely to be discoveries about humanness, what humans can uniquely do that we haven't made yet. And so we'll learn more about ourselves in this. And some of these jobs that I've been talking about will be in that area where we're still able to do things that computers can't do, whatever that will turn out to be. Other questions? Question? No? Yes, back here. Yeah.
I just have a question. Do you think it's necessary, like a competition between computers and humans? Isn't it also not possible for humans to advance themselves using computers? And so they both go towards the same kind of...
Yeah, well, that's what the brain implant would do. And like, I think I talked about this a little bit last time. Dunbar's number, like right now, the size of your natural biological human cortex in your brain, you can have about 150 empathetic friendships where you really care about the other person. Now, with a brain implant, you can imagine that you could have like 1,000 friends where you really care and where you can keep track of each one. Whether we would choose to use those resources that way or to make money or some other base goal, I don't know, but yeah, I think that is happening right now. I mean, there are neural implants now for people with, Parkinson's and other things like that. So it's already happening. It will get better. It's not necessarily us against them. It could be us combined with them. But if they enhance our capabilities like 1,000-fold, then if you come up with an idea, it's sort of vague and poorly formed, and you give it to your neural implant, it makes it 1,000 times better, then is it appropriate that your name be associated with this wonderful idea when the computer did 99.999% of the work, and you just did a little bit in the beginning? I don't know. I think human identity potentially becomes less important, and so this idea of the Borg, of everybody working together, isn't such a bad thing. Maybe if if you're working on a question and somebody else is working on the same question, and most of the solving of this has to do with what your brain implant is doing, then wouldn't it be better to combine it with the other person also working on that? But then your sense of self, when you look in the mirror in the morning and say, who am I? It changes a little bit when most of what you're doing is so much in the hands of other sentient power other than your own biological brain, I guess. So let me just talk about some sort of housekeeping things. So I had those 10 tickets to Nerd Night. I have used 3 of them, but there's still 7 left. Well, I guess there's one for me, so there's 6 left. So if any of you are interested, if you would let me know. So this is at the Citadel Theater. It's sort of people discussing their work life in a humorous way. We'll be for an audience that's drinking. I mean, that's sort of what it is. That's what Nerd Night is. So Ross Lockwood, who is quite a presence in this course and will be teaching you later on, will be talking about the Mars simulation experience. Real life on fake Mars is what that. So you don't have to go. I just wanted to reiterate that there are 6 tickets now left, and eventually there will be none. So if you would let me know about that. Also, as Jack Tazinski said last time, this course is very much sort of shaped by you. So if you have ideas about different ways of doing things, or if you like the idea of having the presentations in the evening, if you like having them during regular class time, other things. Do you have any general questions about the course at the moment? Maybe one thing I should say, it's probably of interest to all of you, but you don't dare ask the question. So undergraduate courses and graduate courses are graded differently, right? Because, the undergraduate courses, you often have the full spectrum. You have students doing really badly and all that sort of thing. In graduate courses, most of the grades are high. And so you don't have to maintain some sort of standard curve. So this is a graduate course, even though most of you taking it are undergraduates. So we are not under any pressure to have some sort of balanced curve. I mean, everybody could get A's and A pluses if you all earned it, and so on. So I just wanted to kind of explain that. Probably some of you know that, but so it's no reason to feel a kind of cutthroat competition or anything. It isn't really like that. So it's an unusual course in that way. I don't know why, but yeah, we get a lot of undergrads interested in it, and so that's the way it has turned out. So any other questions? Got 2 minutes. You know, there's nothing wrong with letting you out early. That's also possible. So what I thought about the videography is we do have some lectures which are really excellent, but are very similar from year to year. And I think we will not video capture those. So the AI lectures, which are crucial for your understanding, and you really got to get that stuff, but they do tend to be pretty much the same from year to year. So it doesn't make sense to use resources capturing high quality video when we already have it of those. But a lot of the other lectures this year, this is the first time that they've ever been, given in exactly this form, and so we will certainly capture those. Okay, anything else you want to talk about in the last minute? Okay, well, we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you very much.